Some countries collapse when they drown in debt, their currencies become worthless, store shelves empty out, people rush to the banks. History is full of examples like this. A country spends too much, debt keeps growing, the economy begins to slow down, and one day people stop trusting that country's money, and most of the time the real collapse begins right there. But when it comes to America, things get a little strange, because America has been borrowing trillions of dollars for years, not just for a few years, for decades. And despite that, the world still continues using the US dollar, and that's the strange part. Under normal circumstances, this level of debt would be a major economic warning sign for most countries, but for America, the system still works. In fact, during times of crisis, people usually don't run away from the dollar, they run toward it. A pandemic happens, people rush to the dollar. A war breaks out, people rush to the dollar. A global financial crisis begins, and investors still buy US Treasury bonds because the modern financial system still largely revolves around America. And today, America's debt is no longer even at the billions level. It's around $34 trillion. A number is so massive that the human mind struggles to truly visualize it. If someone counted $1 every second, it would take hundreds of thousands of years to reach 34 trillion. So we are not talking about ordinary debt here. We are talking about a gigantic system sitting at the center of the modern economy. Now here's the strange part. If an ordinary person spent more money than they earned for years, they would probably go bankrupt. So how has America been able to do this for decades? Why does the world still keep lending money to America? Why does everyone still trust this system? And more importantly, what happens if one day that trust disappears? Because perhaps the most uncomfortable truth about the modern economy is this: the world's most powerful country is also the world's biggest debtor. And despite that, the system still works, or let's take a look to see if it's working. Chapter 1. Why do governments borrow money? Let's start with the most basic question. Why would a government borrow money? Because governments have expenses. Roads are built, armies are formed, hospitals are operated, pensions are paid. During crises, companies get supported, banks get rescued, and sometimes wars are financed. All of this is incredibly expensive. Normally, governments collect this money through taxes, meaning from us. But most of the time, taxes are not enough, and that's where borrowing begins. America does the same thing, but on a much larger scale. And for years, it has been doing one thing: spending more than it earns. If a normal person did this for a long time, they would go bankrupt. So why doesn't America? This is where the real story begins. Chapter 2. America's hidden power. The dollar. To understand America's debt, you first need to understand what the dollar actually is, because the dollar is not just America's currency. The dollar is the central currency of the modern world. Most oil trade is done in dollars. A huge portion of international trade runs on dollars. Central banks hold dollar reserves. Companies use dollars. Countries save dollars. So for decades, the world has trusted not just America, but its currency. And that trust gives America an incredible advantage, because the thing America borrows is the very currency it can print itself. That is an extremely important detail. If you borrow money from someone else, you don't have the power to create that money. But America's central bank, the Federal Reserve, can create dollars. That's why America's system works differently from most countries, because the rest of the world still wants dollars, and as long as people want dollars, America can keep finding lenders. Chapter 3. Who does America owe money to? Now, most people start asking this question. Okay, but who exactly is lending America all this money? The answer is almost everyone. Investment funds, banks, pension funds, other countries. Even ordinary people can indirectly lend money to America, and the method is government bonds. The American government issues bonds and basically says, "Lend me money today and I'll pay you back later with interest." And people buy those bonds. Because for many investors, US Treasury bonds are considered one of the safest investments in the world. That's why money flows into America from all around the globe. For example, countries like Japan and China have held massive amounts of US debt for years. And honestly, the system is a little strange. America imports products. The world sells goods to America. In return, they earn dollars. Then part of those dollars gets lent back to America again. So the system keeps spinning around itself, and it has continued this way for decades. Chapter 4. So why is this dangerous? Up to this point, everything might sound normal, but there's a huge problem. As debt grows, interest payments grow too, and eventually governments start paying enormous amounts of interest just to keep the system running. That is exactly one of the things America is dealing with today, because now it's not just the debt itself, even the interest on that debt has become enormous, and this creates a very critical risk. If people ever lose confidence in America's debt, America may have to offer much higher interest rates, and that makes the system far more expensive, more interest, more debt, more money printing. And if that cycle spirals out of control, inflation can become a serious problem. History has shown examples of this before. Some countries borrowed excessively, then they printed money, then their currencies collapsed. So why hasn't America faced the same ending yet? Because the global economy still largely revolves around America. And to be honest, during times of crisis, people often run toward the dollar, not away from it. And that is one of the biggest reasons the system is still standing. Chapter 5. Can America actually go bankrupt? This is probably one of the most asked questions. Technically, any country can experience an economic crisis, but America's situation is different because its debt is denominated in its own currency, which means theoretically it has the power to create more dollars. That's why many economists say America probably won't go bankrupt in the traditional sense, but that does not mean nothing bad can happen. Because sometimes instead of outright collapse, other things happen. High inflation, loss of purchasing power, rising interest rates, economic slowdown, higher living costs. So the danger is not always a dramatic collapse. Sometimes it's a slow erosion that people feel over many years. And honestly, those may be the scariest economic crises of all. Because they don't happen overnight, they slowly affect everyday life year after year. We actually talked about this before when we covered hyperinflation in the Weimar Republic. Definitely check out my previous videos if you're interested in that topic. Chapter 6. Is the real issue debt or trust? This is where things become truly interesting. Because the modern economy is built largely on trust. People believe the dollar has value, banks trust the system, countries trust US bonds, companies trust the future, and because of that, the system works. In fact, a huge part of economics is psychological, not physical. Even a simple piece of paper only has value because people collectively agree that it does. America's power does not come only from its military or its corporations. It also comes from the trust people place in its system. And history shows us something important. Empires do not always weaken because of military defeat. Sometimes they weaken first through economic distrust. Conclusion. Maybe the real question about America's debt is not, how big is the debt? Maybe the real question is this: how long will the world continue trusting this system? Because modern economics sometimes works less like mathematics and more like a belief system, and as long as people continue believing in it, systems worth trillions of dollars can continue standing. But when trust breaks, even the strongest economies can shake. And maybe that's why America's debt is not just an economic issue, it's also the story of how the modern world actually works. Personally, I don't know if America will truly collapse financially one day, but I do think difficult times may be ahead. In this video, I tried to explain America's national debt in the simplest way possible. Until the next video, stay with health, science, and reality. Take care.